Hi everybody, Think Differently Thursday, because it's Thursday again, and my guest today is Alex. Hiya Alex.
Hello, how's it
How
going?
are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, doing okay.
Good, good. Now we'll find out lots more about you, Alex, as we chat. But just very briefly, if you had to give a little snapshot of Alex Laver, how would you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. So I never know what to call myself. The title I've kind of given myself is promotional filmmaker. That's kind of what I do as a job. I do it across a bunch of different organizations and kind of different formats and things like that. But yeah, so promotional filmmaker primarily is a kind of catch-all of everything, really. I do videography, I do a tiny bit of photography, I make videos and films for a living, and half of my time is taken up making all the video material for the Forge, and the other half is freelance, doing it for other companies, various other or partnering with other creatives as well.
Great, great. Does sound like a fab fun job. So you work, as you're saying, part-time for the Forge, and I kind of like, I have in mind that you're quite new to staff, but it's one of those things, I bet you're not actually. How long have you actually been on staff now?
8 years.
Is
Yeah,
it?
8 years.
Yeah.
Flipping heck, yeah,
Yeah.
that's like most of my kind of, well, basically all of my 20s. I've been on
Wow. Your
the
grown-up
Forge stuff,
life.
and yeah, my grown-up life in some capacity. I've worked for the Forge in some way. So yeah,
Great.
it's been a long time.
And I think possibly you are, so you're a staff member, as am I, but often my face is a bit out there, whereas you are very much a kind of face behind the scenes, I think, because
Yeah.
of promoting so much of our online content. So you've said you are a promotional filmmaker. Just give us a bit more detail then. What is it that we see that is what you've done?
That actually, yeah, before the pandemic, it would have been almost everything video related.
Right.
Probably with the exception of the live stream, which was created and run by a bunch of brilliant volunteers. All the video material that would go up on screen on a Sunday morning, anything specific to the Forge, was something that I created. Now with everything that we've had to do to kind of keep church going throughout the pandemic, with the live stream, with kind of building up our studio, that has now become, it's kind of half and half. So the actual live stream itself is run by staff members and some incredible volunteers, and but anything that's kind of pre-recorded or anything that's on location, as we kind of say,
Yeah.
like where it's
Yeah.
um, outside of the studio,
So
will be
things like
created by
on
me.
Sunday we had we had a trailer for the new series, which was Tim doing his architect type stuff, and we had Steve over at Sizewell Hall. That's all you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Okay.
and then kind of beyond that, it's kind of coming up with the concepts that get created. So
Yeah.
some of what I do is very much, we need to go here and we need to film this and capture this, and other times it's, we need to invoke this feeling, or we need to build on this idea or this series, and
Right.
how can we demonstrate that in video. And
Yeah.
so a lot of what I do is kind of helping to create those ideas and create
Yeah.
those different concepts, really.
Yeah. So is the planning and the creativity, is that time wise more? Is that a bigger bit of your time than the actual physical filming?
The physical filming actually doesn't take up that much time. If I was going to put it in, uh yeah, if I was going to put it in like a pie chart of how much time it takes up, create the kind of creative side is probably like a third, let's say. So it would be,
Okay.
that's coming up with the ideas, figuring out how they fit in with the rest of the themes and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and that kind of carries over to freelance stuff as well. A lot of it is pre-production, so it's meeting with people, figuring out exactly what you want to achieve, and how much time you have to achieve it.
Yeah.
And then probably another probably less than a quarter, maybe like half, a third, or whatever, or a sixth at that time is actually being on set. A lot of the time I spend on set is like, it's fairly minimal, the time that we take to do a lot of our filming, because we're working on kind of low budget and no budget stuff. So a lot of it is time sensitive, and then the rest of it is just editing. So editing
Okay.
takes up a lot of time, and actually a lot
Right.
of that is searching for the right music and all this other stuff,
Right.
searching for
Yeah.
something that you can't create or you haven't created, that you need someone else to create for you, whether it's a music service or a musician in general.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is just taken up by trying to search for the
Just
exact right
looking for something.
thing.
Yeah. 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 I get
Yeah.
that. So is this whole line of work, is this what, so you say you've been doing this kind of like in your 20s in your work life. Is this
Yeah.
what you had always worked towards or studied towards or dreamed of? Is this where you thought you were going to be doing what you thought you were going to be doing?
No, well, no idea. No, I had no idea
Okay.
when I was younger. I was, and I still am to an extent. When I was younger, I was just really lazy, and so the school report that I got back most was, Alex is bright but lazy. And actually, to be honest, I'll probably take issue with that first bit anyway. But the for the most part, I kind of coasted through, or just about managed to get through like GCSEs without being a complete failure. And then unfortunately, when I got to college, I didn't have enough grades to actually do a proper course, if you
Okay.
like. I
Yeah.
wasn't quite good enough to do it, even like even a BTEC, even a proper BTEC.
Right.
And so I went into a kind of what's the word? It was like a foundation BTEC that you had to do. It's like a year you had to do before you could actually get on the proper course.
Right. Yeah.
And that was horrible. Like, I hated that. But I realized that actually there was, if I was going to succeed at anything, I just had to kind of, pull up my trousers and just get stuff done, really.
Yeah.
And so I went to the guy who led the course and said, what would it take to eliminate this year? Like, I don't want to be doing kind of a 3-year course. And so he said to write an essay. I think it was, I can't remember what the essay was for, but it was basically like a film-based essay, like examining film in general. I can't remember what it was, but he liked it enough that he just bumped me up to the 2-year course. So that
Mm.
eliminated that year. I
Right.
I then did a 2-year diploma and then went to university. And as you said, like, you asked kind of like, was this something I always envisioned doing? Was it something that I was always working towards? To be honest, like in GCSE, I just saw that they did media studies and I thought it looked like fun. I
Yeah.
then did it at college because it was something I was doing at GCSE. And then I did it at university because it was something I did at college. And it was just kind of that,
Right.
it
Yeah.
slowly became what I did.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I very much enjoyed it, but it had its kind of ups and downs. And
Yeah.
slowly throughout university, it just became my reality. And
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about applying for jobs out of university, and that brings us to the Forge and everything like that. um it just became this goal, like, you had to get a job doing this
Right.
video based stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I
That's really interesting.
where I came from.
You're the second person that works for the Forge that I've spoken to this week that has kind of said actually the whole school experience hadn't particularly worked out what's doomed to be successfully. And yet,
Yeah.
actually, you are so good at what you have kind of grown into and what you're doing now. Very interesting. I think it's really great for people to hear. Particularly because, as I said earlier, you're not necessarily a face that people see, but actually you are the face behind so much of what we do and what people see of our content. What would you say is the best part of your job? What really energizes you? What do you love most?
Um, for the most part, yeah, the best part of my job really is just when I get to work, and this is why this year actually has been quite, in some ways, a struggle. Is that I enjoy being on set and being part of a team and working
Right.
towards kind of a singular thing. Sometimes it's nice when you have complete control over what you're doing, and you're the only person on set trying to making these smaller projects and
Mm.
really taking your time and honing it in. But actually the kind of hustle and bustle, the kind of the pressure of being on set, when you've got a small time frame and you're all
Mm.
just trying to get it done,
Mm.
is, yeah, that's the thing I most enjoy. I remember
Okay.
a few years ago, I did a job out in Coventry, and it was for this this corporate band organization. So we're just filming them performing basically, and it was this this big thing where it was a 2-day thing, and we were filming from like 7 in the morning, and I think I left at like 1 in the morning, and it was like, and I had to drive home as well, so
Oh my
I had
goodness.
to drive from Coventry back to Suffolk, and it was that gave me just so much energy, even though it exhausted me. It
Yeah.
was just that onset kind of pressure is
Yeah.
stressful but fun.
And I guess
And
they're
yeah,
all like little projects, aren't they? That you see it from that creative side to the mechanics of making it happen. And then it must be so satisfying when you see your thing go out. It must be wonderful.
yeah, when I get it done, yeah, there is obviously the feeling of achievement when you know, especially when something's been stressing you out, especially when you're editing
Yeah.
it and making it, you know, maybe for example, it isn't quite going the way you want it to go, and finally when you get it done, there is definitely that sense of achievement. When it goes out, sometimes occasionally, you know, there'll be the video that you'll look at and you'll be like, yeah, that I'm really proud of that, and I'll watch it over and over again. And especially when you send it out to other people or other
Yeah.
people have seen it,
Yeah.
you watch it back again because you see it through their eyes and you
Yeah.
imagine it through their
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
Especially if you're proud of it. But yeah, a lot of the time it is very much um the artist's rod for, I'm not really an artist, but the artist's rod for their own back, that you look at the flaws in it a lot of the time as well. So you
Right.
see
Yeah.
what you could have done better or what potential could have been there. So it's yeah, it can be great obviously, but it also can be really stressful
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
don't know quite
Especially,
how it's going to be received.
and I guess time constraints as well. If there's a deadline and it's got to be done, I guess that's pretty stressful as well.
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
What is the worst bit then? Is it that, or is it the editing? What is the
Yeah.
worst bit? That's
Yeah, probably the editing. Finding music is probably the worst bit. Yeah,
oh,
finding the right
okay.
music is easily the worst bit because you know, you can't just go out and just use like Coldplay or whatever you want. It has to
I
be.
think
It
I
has to.
would. I'd just
Yeah,
put something behind
yeah.
it.
And you can't always find the perfect music,
Right.
and it's really difficult because again, you're using someone else's art or whatever to
Yeah.
express a feeling of some sort, whether it's an emotional feeling that you're trying to put into a video, or it's an exciting feeling, or a
Yeah.
you know, a suspenseful feeling that you're trying to put in this video, and it's always really really hard. So that's probably the worst
Mm.
part, alongside sometimes when you just come off set and you realize you didn't get enough, like you didn't quite get enough to
Oh,
make
yeah.
what you wanted to make, and you feel like you're doing this kind of patchwork to put it
Right.
together
Yeah.
again. Most people won't see it, like
Yeah.
won't look at that and think that's like patchwork together, um but you see it and it kind of gets, it can come sometimes
Yeah.
get to you. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably the worst part.
It's interesting you saying about searching for the music behind things. I think in watching stuff, not necessarily your stuff, just generally stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know if I even dare tell you this. So I don't think it's a very good thing
no,
to
go
say.
for it.
I'm not convinced I notice the music behind it, but I think I probably do subconsciously. Do you know what I mean? If it wasn't there,
Yeah,
it would seem empty. We were watching David Attenborough last night, and we
yeah,
actually
yeah,
commented on the music that they had chosen to put behind this lizard that looked sort of really comical compared to
yeah.
what was behind the tiger. And it really made me think there's so much behind all of this that we just,
Mm,
you would always be aware of it, just kind of take for granted that I'm watching.
yeah,
But maybe hours and hours have gone on behind the scenes of that, just getting that tiny bit of music.
that's you've kind of hit the nail on the head really. The issue with filmmaking or making kind of a video content in general is that it's hopelessly impractical, and it's messy, and it's difficult, and it's exactly what you said, that if an editor does a great job, you don't notice it. That's the whole point
Mm,
really. And it's
mm,
the same with music in some ways. If an orchestra or a conductor or the a composer does a great job scoring a film or making you know, adding music to a video, um yeah, if it goes unnoticed and you just feel what they're
yeah,
trying to put across, as opposed to thinking what they're
Yeah.
trying to put
Yeah.
across, then they've done their job
It's
well.
good. Yeah.
And occasionally, you know, that's not to say that if you notice the music, then the person's done a bad job or anything like that.
No.
It's just that, yeah, it's kind of, as you said, everything has to almost feel behind the scenes to feel natural and approachable.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, you know, obviously there'll be like, you know, you have documentaries like David Attenborough. You'll have little videos that we do that just kind of explain something that might be going on at the Forge,
Yeah.
or a video for a company that is explaining kind of what they're trying to do. But then you've also got narrative film, and narrative film is obviously, you want it to be as seamless as possible because you don't want people to notice or feel like they're watching something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, you've hit the nail on the head really with that.
You are very, very clever. And the stuff
I
that we
take issue
do,
with that.
you are. The stuff that we do is so good, and I know that we've had lots and lots of positive feedback, particularly I think at times from other churches that are looking to do the same sort of thing. I know, you know, the people that know this stuff look at our church and do compliment us on how good it is. What is it that makes you good at it? Is it an eye for images? Is it kind of artistic flair? What would you say it is that makes you good at what you do?
The short answer is I don't know.
Luck?
I
Maybe
don't
it's
really, yeah,
luck.
well, luck, I think so, yeah. Well, to be honest, like, there's all sorts of stuff. Like, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not actually amazingly good at what I do, because obviously there's people, you know, in my profession, who've got my kind of experience, who have done incredible things. Actually, where I kind of sit is fairly middle ground. But for the most part, like, yeah, it is luck. For a while, I just tried to do the whole get by on just kind of raw talent alone, and it just doesn't work. You have to have discipline. You have to have a certain amount. You have to have a good work ethic, all that stuff. Like any other job, the main thing is just not getting, or trying your best not to get complacent where you are with your skill
Yeah.
set. Trying to always develop your skill set. For me, like, the difficulty is I turned my kind of hobby, or my passion, or whatever you want to call it,
Mm,
into my day job, and that
yeah.
has really good and bad kind of ramifications. But one of the things I guess is good about it is I don't really think about anything else.
Right.
You know, I'm always kind of thinking about this stuff, and whether that's good or bad, you know, it's probably not great that I can't switch off from my work, but I find that yeah, I can easily kind of go down rabbit holes with certain aspects of filmmaking, and
Right.
actually there will be certain things that I obviously struggle with, you know, disciplines, if you like, of filmmaking that I do struggle with. And
Right.
that's where you have to kind of yeah, you just kind of got to hammer down and try and get the work done, or try and
Yeah.
learn a new thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what makes me good at
How
what I do.
how lovely
Experience.
though, Alex, to be able to say that you're doing a job that in a sense is like your hobby and your passion. That's the dream, isn't
Yeah.
it? Lovely.
Well, I think so. I think I've discovered though that you need something else. Obviously, I think I'd kind of say to people that if you ever want to turn your passion into your day job, there's obviously going to be sacrifices in
Yeah.
that. But one of those things is that actually you are sacrificing the thing that you get enjoyment out of sometimes, and actually you're
Yeah.
putting a lot of pressure on it. And more
Yeah.
importantly, like, say you have a day job of I don't know, in an office job, let's say, and your passion is to try and be in a band or make music or something like that. As soon as you make that job, you've got to fill that downtime with something. Otherwise, you do what I do, and my
Mm,
wife always complains at me at, which is I'll come into because it's the home office. I'll come into the home office and
yeah.
tinker, and that's the problem. You can
Yeah.
never quite get
Don't
away from.
switch off from the two
Yeah,
things.
you don't
Yeah,
switch
I
off from
see
it. So
that.
I think you need something else. So for me, the only other thing that I care about is cars, really, and that's the only other thing that I'm kind of into. And I've had to try and, over the years, feed
Yeah.
that interest,
Yeah.
because it helps me calm down from the other thing I like to do.
Yeah, I see. I see. And do you ever find that because of the way you look at film, and I think I'm asking this question because occasionally I hear you and someone like Callum, who often is involved with some of the stuff we produce, particularly on a
Yeah.
Sunday morning, talking about things like films that you've watched or stuff on the telly, and you spot all the kind of mistakes, don't you, or the things that could have been done better. Do you find that what you do at times spoils your enjoyment of your kind of thing?
Yeah, I think you can't get away from it, really.
Right.
It's sometimes going to spoil it. The biggest problem, right? The biggest problem is it makes you really cynical when you're watching stuff that you don't want to watch. And so
Right.
when you're going out your way to watch the thing that you want to watch, where, let's say, you know, I enjoy Marvel movies, like you watch that and you watch those films and you can see them for what they are. And actually, what's great about those kind of films is that they're so massive budget and complex, you can barely comprehend how anything gets put together, so you can kind of switch your brain off. But when it comes to, I remember ages ago sitting in my parents-in-law their lounge, and my sister-in-law was sitting there watching a TV show, and I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called oh, is it the Say Yes to the Dress? Is that the show where they talk about,
Is
it's
it a
like wedding
weddingy
dresses,
program?
the wedding dress something? And I had no control over the remote, so I you know, I'm just sitting
And it
there kind
wasn't
of
really
minding
your
my
type of
own.
program,
No,
maybe?
of course not. No, but the problem is it makes you really cynical, because you can see that that's the most obvious thing when you see the edits and you see the way they've manipulated the story to make it
Right.
see like this person is mad at this person, and
Right.
the kind of fake dramatization. But but I think knowing that, and yeah, and kind of understanding that, sometimes I think early on in my career it was harder, but as I've kind of mellowed out, I think, a little bit, I try less to kind of sit there and pick apart things. I
Right.
just try and yeah, try and kind of switch my brain off a little bit and enjoy them. For example, I'm a big fan of The Hunted, you know, the
Yeah.
Channel 4 TV show.
Yeah.
Amazing TV show. Half of it is fake and everything like that. It's fine. Like half of it's all contrived and everything, but it's just so fun to get immersed in it that I just kind of switch off my brain and think,
Right.
actually, it's just more fun to kind of go along with the madness
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah. So no, people ask me that. That's probably the thing that people ask me the most.
Right.
And sometimes it can, as I said, sometimes it can take you out of it.
Mm.
But sometimes, yeah, it kind of helps. Ideally, switch your brain off a little bit.
I guess it might be true of all sorts of occupations as well. I wonder if I'm thinking it because I've had decorators in recently. I wonder if, you know, they can't help looking at other people's homes at times and
Oh,
thinking, "Hmm,
definitely, yeah,
that needs
yeah.
decorating."
Oh
Maybe,
yeah,
I don't know.
if you've ever come across any kind of yeah, sound engineer, lighting engineer, that, you know, they're always able to kind of pick this stuff apart.
Yeah.
And some, you know, you'll always get people who will want to do that because that's just how their brain works. They just want to kind of pick everything apart. And then other
Yeah.
people who will, you know, who will just, as I said, kind of do what I do. And if you ask them, they'll be honest with you. But for the most part, they're just kind of happy. Leave, especially me as kind of a feeble-minded sound person and lighting person. Leave me to kind of my innocence for the most part. But yeah.
So thinking about, like, so I've grown up in and around churches,
Yeah.
and it's a relatively new thing that we have so much digital content, and there would be a lot of churches that still wouldn't. And we've employed you to come and yeah, do film for us. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a priority for all churches. Why do you think that getting good quality content out digitally is so important?
Um, I don't think I really have to. It sounds arrogant, sorry, but like I don't think I really have to justify the importance of video in this day and age, because everything we watch, everything we kind of consume at this point is pretty much video based, with the
Yeah.
exception of radio and music to an extent. Everything that we're looking at constantly is either video or photography based or something.
Mm, mm,
And that those all kind of go hand in hand, really. The idea of, well, Instagram is built off photos, and you've got
mm,
YouTube that's built off
mm,
video, and same with kind of the same with Facebook, and I really realistically Twitter's the only one that's really remaining that is solely about the written word. Everything else, everything you watch on Facebook or see on Facebook is an image or a video of some sort. So it is important, like it just is nowadays, and it always has been, but the problem is it's just been prohibitively expensive and difficult. But now everything's been democratized so much. Sharing photo, 20 years ago, sharing a photo was a nightmare. Sharing a video was pretty much impossible. And actually, when you did see a video that someone had shared, it became this huge deal because it was like everybody had seen this video. It's one of those things. And so and then obviously in the late kind of noughties, as YouTube was kind of becoming what it is now, again it began its decade-long stream of being fully democratized. And again, not to get too kind of technical and go around too many rabbit holes, but in like 2008, 2009, Canon and other manufacturers thought that, what if we took these stills cameras, these digital photo cameras, and we put a video function in them, and that everybody could use their nice lenses, and you could have like big images and big sensors and things like that. And that really kicked off my, we were talking about where I came from. One of the things that gave me the ability to go from college to university to having a job in video creation or video production in some way, was the DSLR revolution, which is taking this technology and putting it into this affordable package, and making decent video with it. And so there isn't really, coming back to your question, there isn't really much of an excuse nowadays not to at least try and invest in it, because you're never going to get into there's never going to be a good jumping off point, because it's always going to develop and get better and better and better. So now, there's, in 2008 it was the DSLR revolution, and then obviously when iPhones started being able to shoot decent video, that was another revolution in video again. So when it comes to churches sharing what we have to offer, I guess, or what our point is, or what our reason for existence is, video is it's incredibly important. But at the same time, I totally understand why it's not always a priority, because it's expensive and messy and impractical and difficult, and also, like as you said, it's crowded at the moment as well. Like there's lots of people doing this now. A lot of especially in the last year, it's become incredibly important, and so we've kind of seen a saturation in people doing it. And so part of you is a little bit like, or part of if you're running a church or running an organization, part of you might think, how do we stand out? How do we get ourselves out there amongst the noise? And there's no easy answer to that, really. There's no easy answer to that.
That is a great answer, though. When you started looking for work, were you looking specifically to work with a church, or were you looking for work in other fields as well?
No, like you, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't even know if this was a thing. Like so like my kind of journey as a Christian is a bit all over the place. But for the most part, I grew up in a Christian family. At the age of like 13, I went to a place called DCYC, which is Devon Christian Youth Camps. And I became a Christian when I was 13. And then when I went to university, I just kind of, partly through kind of alienation through a lot of the Christian unions and things that were at university, they were quite cliquey, they were quite judgmental for the most part. I felt a bit alienated by the whole thing, so I kind of just went, my daft 18-year-old self just kind of went, what's the point? And so for like entirety of university, I basically just kind of gave up on faith. And then when I came out of university, I was very lucky to have some great people from my home church, a guy called Mark Jones and a few other people, a guy called Dave Finnegan, kind of invest time in me and to kind of just chat through stuff with me. And eventually it was kind of, when I was looking for jobs, it just became this moment where I saw the job for the Forge, and it felt like that was where I was meant to be, or like in some capacity, whether I didn't get that job, whether I got that job or not, working for an organization of some sort that wasn't heartless, because the media industry traditionally can be quite heartless and a
Okay.
bit vapid.
Yeah.
Uh, if finding a place where I could do something that wasn't heartless or wasn't vapid was of real interest to me. And so
Great.
that's kind of how it all began. And then I think I can't remember how long after I left university, between like leaving university, rediscovering my faith, getting baptized, and then working for a church. I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was
Right. That's
roughly like six
so
months.
that's so interesting. I think I love hearing people's story where other people have had such significant impact, because I think we all underestimate the impact we can have in other people's lives. And I think
Mm.
this Sunday just gone, Steve was sharing about various stories of people that have found Jesus, and every time it's because, you know, somebody else has invested in them. And you speak about those guys that kind of scooped
Mm.
you up after uni and really helped you kind of rediscover faith. I think it's really important for all of us to know that we've kind of all got a responsibility there, but it's always worth just like reaching out to people. I love that.
Definitely, yeah,
Really, really
definitely.
great. So you said about being down in Devon. So Devon was where you were. Family home is down in Devon.
Yeah, grew up, born and raised there until I was 18, then moved to Winchester University and lived in
Right.
Winchester for 3 years. Then almost lived in like various places, obviously, because coming out of university, you apply for 100 different jobs.
Yeah.
And so almost lived in London a couple of times and in Brighton and a few other places. But yeah, ended up not working out, came back home, kind of wallowed in my own kind of self-pity
Okay.
for a little while, and then kind of picked myself up and got back
Yeah.
into kind of applying for jobs and getting work. And yeah, and then I to be honest, when I applied for the job at the Forge, I didn't even really know where Suffolk was. And
What?
yeah, exactly. I didn't really know I'm not very good at like geography. As I said, I kind of failed most of my GCSEs. But for the most part, I just kind of, I knew that Devon wasn't the place where I needed to be. I needed to be
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Okay.
But I didn't know where that was. I
Yeah.
assumed, like a lot of people, it was going to be London or
Mm.
Bristol or Manchester or some of the other kind of big creative hubs. But yeah, that was.
But you came to
I don't remember.
Suffolk. We're so glad that you did. So how do you find Suffolk compared to Devon? I think, in some ways we're a bit similar, aren't we? Fairly
Yes,
rural.
yeah. Well, even like the church I grew up in kind of had similar. It was called Dawlish
Ah,
Christian Fellowship as opposed
right.
to Mendelsham Christian Fellowship, which was the start of the Forge. And
Yeah.
so similar kind of church upbringing in some ways
Okay.
to a lot of the people that I know in Suffolk. Yeah, obviously built up heavily by kind of farmers and farm culture. But yeah, the reason I love Suffolk, the reason I felt like Devon was, I don't know, it wasn't where I was supposed to be. It was partly just because geographically it's kind of at the pointy end of
Yeah.
of
It's
of
a long
Britain,
way
and
away.
it's a long way from a lot of different things. And
Yeah.
so being in Suffolk's 100 times better for that simple reason of it's just more accessible to other places. But when I first visited here, there was just something really nice about the vast expanse. It was very
Right.
flat, which
Yeah.
is quite nice. I like Devon, and I think that's part of the reason I've probably gained weight over the last 8 years, is that Devon is very full of lots of hills,
Yeah. A
and
lot
I
of
didn't have a
walking up and
car,
down.
and so I did a lot of walking, and I kept fairly slim. And then as soon as I moved here and I got a car and
It's
everything's
flat.
flat, I slowly started to kind of pudge out. But for the most part, yeah, as I said, like when I first kind of looked around Suffolk, or when I first visited here, it was just nice because it felt big and spacious. And you're
Yeah.
driving. As I said, I'm a big fan of cars, so you spend most of your time in fourth and fifth gear, so you're just kind of gliding around. It's a lot of fun.
And so I guess if your family are down in Devon and 2020 was what it was, you probably didn't see much of your family last year.
No, no, not at all. So well, yeah, seeing my family it can always be a bit difficult, especially around like Christmas and Easter, the times where you
Mm,
really want to
mm,
kind of be with your family. Logistically, it's always difficult. But yeah, I'd visit a couple of times a year. They visit up here a couple of times a year. We kind of figure it out.
mm.
But yeah, previously, basically, I think it was. Oh yeah, it was September time, just after I announced that me and my wife were pregnant. I took a trip down to Devon just to see them, because I knew that, I think the last time I'd seen them was Christmas 2019. And so
Right. Yeah.
I went down there, saw them for a day, very much kind of drove down there, stayed in their house, didn't go outside, didn't do anything, because I was like, I don't want to mess up any
Yeah.
kind of like COVID restrictions that we're having, especially going all the way across the country.
Yeah.
And saw them for a couple of days and then just came back, and that was the last time I saw them. And then
Wow.
similarly, things got worse again with COVID, and so the next time I'll probably see them will be when the baby's actually here. So it's kind of a weird time
Yeah.
jump.
So when's the baby due? Because that's the next part of the story, isn't it? That you're in Suffolk, you met Beth, and you've
Yep.
married, and you're having a baby, and it's quite soon, isn't it?
It's very soon. Yeah, we're at 37 weeks, so technically full term. So any moment, really. By
Wow.
the time, actually, to be fair, by the time that people see this, the baby might already be here. It might not be. The due date is at the end of March. So yeah,
Okay.
but as you rightly said, it's kind of that journey of I've been here for 8 years, and during that time, I've moved up here. I've found a wife and having a kid, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
And
it's
how's
all
that
quite a moment.
whole experience of pregnancy been during what is the most extraordinary year? I mean, I literally think we're going to see people with babies. You're going to be one of them for some people, going to see
Yeah.
people with babies that we didn't even know that they were expecting a baby. But presumably you haven't had the same classes and all that sort of thing in the same way that you would have done if it hadn't been for COVID. Is it
Yeah.
been weird? I guess you haven't compared it to anything, so
No, I don't really know I don't know
yeah,
anything else really. I
yeah,
know people who are having their second or third children in lockdown or during this time, and yeah, I can imagine they have something to compare it to. It might be quite
yeah,
difficult for that reason. Yeah, it's obviously been really difficult for a lot of different reasons. Primarily for Beth, it's been
yeah.
the loneliness. Obviously,
Mm,
being heavily pregnant or being pregnant
mm,
during this time when, especially, she'd spend a lot of time usually with her family,
yeah,
week in, week out. That's been really, really tough. But otherwise, I don't really have much else to compare it to.
yeah.
It can be a bit nerve wracking, as you've heard from me, actually, because I vaguely remember a time when I was about to go for my 20-week scan, and I think we'd been filming together on a Sunday morning, and then the
Right.
day after, I think you said, oh yeah, someone I work with has got COVID, so I've got to go get tested. And it's
Oh,
just the nerve-wracking nature of, like,
yeah.
again, if I get COVID, obviously that's sucks, but it's kind of yeah, obviously I'm not going to be going into a hospital if I've
Mm,
if I've got COVID, but it's just the um with all the rules and everything, and with
mm,
that kind of chain reaction of, if someone you've been in
mm,
contact has this and this and this, then you can't do this, you can't do this one
yeah,
thing. And one of those things was, if I had been in contact with someone who had COVID, I wouldn't be able to be at the 20-week scan. And so it's just like little stresses, little
yeah,
things that might stress you out, because
yeah,
I've just always been in that scenario, been in that what's the word, the I've just always been in a scenario where something could stop me from going to the
yeah,
hospital at any moment.
yeah,
Whereas actually, I can imagine a lot of other people, unless they decide to go abroad while their wife's heavily pregnant or their partner's heavily pregnant, then yeah, they don't tend to run the risk of not actually being there. And
mm,
so
mm,
that's been the only kind of real stress of it
yeah,
all.
yeah. And so you'll isolate, will you, just before the birth? Is that what you're planning to
Well, yeah,
do?
ideally, obviously, we can't predict when
Yeah,
it's coming, but we're going to isolate before the due date, and
yeah,
hopefully it will,
yeah,
either nothing bad will happen before
yeah.
I we go into the delivery room,
And
in
can you
regards.
go in for whole time, or have you got to just go in at the end? What are they saying now?
I can't remember, actually. No, I think, because a lot of labor is spent, like, this is something I didn't know. A lot of labor, unless you're being induced, is spent at home.
Yeah,
A lot of the time,
yeah,
you're kind of waiting to go into hospital, and so
yeah,
actually, once Beth is at that point where she has to be in hospital for labor,
mm,
I can then go in with her.
right,
It'd be different if she was being induced. Then I would have to wait outside. You actually see it,
okay,
if I've been to the hospital a couple of times, where you see dads waiting out in the car, because they've
right,
just got to wait for them
wow,
to be at the point where they
yeah.
can give birth to a child, and then they
That's
can go in.
really tough. And
Really, really
so,
tough.
do you feel ready? Have you got everything? Are you prepared?
No, like, of course not. No, no. Mentally, I have no idea. Like, again, it's, I
No.
think everybody says you can never be fully prepared. So I'm
No.
just expecting never to be fully prepared for the
Yes.
most part.
And I think
In
that's the
terms of,
whole of parenting. Even when the
oh,
baby
definitely.
arrives,
Yeah.
my experience is just when you get used to a stage, it changes.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I've heard. And
Ongoing.
yes, oh yeah. And so yeah, so for the most part, it's just the well, as you said, like, have we been able to take classes and things like that?
Mm,
Luckily, like, my brother-in-law, a friend of his from America, they run like an online training thing for
okay.
birthing classes, and so we've been sent that, and we're kind of working our way through that. But even that a lot of that is very much like, you can feel kind of prepared from a not skills based standpoint, I mean, like,
Theory. Got the theory.
theory, yeah, theoretically prepared
Yeah.
for a lot of the stuff that might happen, but there's 100 different things that can happen, all go wrong or surprise you. But from a kind of a logistical standpoint of, we've got the
Got the
pram and
stuff.
the car seat and the stuff that babies seem to demand, it's yeah, we're pretty much there. And we've got the kind of the house in a place where we feel prepared to kind of
Great.
accommodate a baby, at least until it starts trying to break everything. And yeah, but as I said, like, I keep thinking that I'm mentally prepared for it, but I can't tell whether it's like all these cliches about you'll never be prepared for what it's like to be a parent, or for when your kid comes. I can never tell whether that's like a cliche for a reason because it's so true, or it's just something that people go on and on about, and actually it's just a cliche because enough people have that experience, but generally it's kind of it's different for everybody. So
Yeah,
different people
exactly
feel
that. I
differently
think
prepared. Yeah.
everyone's experience is different, isn't it? You bring
Mm,
yourself to it, you bring your own experience of how you were parented, your own experience of
definitely.
siblings.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you'll find your own way with it, definitely. What are you looking
Yeah.
forward to most about it?
I just want to see the kid. I think who was it? It was a guy called Lewis Johnston, who's part of the church. He mentioned on a podcast ages ago that we did, that it's strange how you think about when you have your first kid. You always imagine having your first kid, or having your kids in general, and you always imagine, you can never quite picture what they're going to look like, but you can always imagine there's going to be this person that's going to be yours, that you're going to be your son or your daughter. And I think that for me, it's that moment of like seeing the baby and being like, that's what you look like, that's who you are, like that, and I'm your dad. That's the
Yeah,
kind of thing I'm looking forward to
yeah,
most, is just being like, oh, and especially like, you get to know the baby kind of in the womb a little bit, like you get
yeah,
to know these little traits of what it's like, and these little glimpses of what it's like. And so, but you don't get to properly see it even on the scans. Like, it's quite, it's
yeah,
obviously difficult to see what it looks like. So it's
yeah.
just, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
It's an adventure. It's the
Mm,
best thing ever.
mm.
And you said earlier about being a Christian and that point of kind of coming back to faith and going on with your faith now. So, how would you say that your faith is going to impact your parenting?
Um, this is interesting because you sent me this question in advance, actually, and I didn't quite.
Shh,
Yeah.
shh.
Just this one, just this
Just this
question.
spontaneous conversation we're having.
This is what I do. I pick apart all kinds of media, including the stuff that I'm
Yeah,
involved
you've
in.
just blown my whole cover. Thanks, Alex. I don't know how to edit.
But yeah, so I didn't quite know how to answer this, because I think a lot of what I enjoy about faith, it comes from the community that's kind of built around it, really. I think that yeah, how I plan to parent as a Christian, or how I plan to bring up my child, knowing that Jesus had died for their sins, all that stuff. I haven't really got a firm idea in my head. My thing is always just not to drop the ball with it. Try and make sure that actually I'm not leaving it up to other people to kind of teach my kids about what it is to be a Christian, or what it is to to have a faith, even though, as we've already mentioned, in regards to some of the people that helped me in my hardest times, it's important to have those people, and it's important to build those relationships, especially as they grow up. And that's why, kids workers, youth leaders are always incredibly important. But yeah, for me, I guess I want to try and one of the big things about being a parent, and again, I'm not quite a parent yet, but I nearly am, is that everything's a challenge, but you've just got to kind of be up for the challenge. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to, or the one of the things that I'm kind of up for the challenge really, is that like all of us, I struggle with my faith. I find I find times where I am really strong in what I believe and what I feel I'm called to do, and then other times I waver. I feel I feel nervous about the future where I shouldn't be in some ways. And so for me, like, just trying to do my best by them in regards to that, and to be up to the challenge of at least exempling the idea of a relatively strong faith. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something
Yeah,
like that.
I think, and mine are grown up now. I think as a parent, I wish that I had involved God and Jesus much more in just the day to day. Do you know what I mean? In the very small, minute detail of the day, I wish I had involved him more. I think perhaps as parents we put him a bit in a box or a compartment that I wouldn't do it like that now. I think
my hope would be that I try not to mystify what God is and who Jesus is too much, because I think that's really helped me in my faith, is knowing that and kind of trying to understand what the Bible is. It's an account of Jesus's life and beforehand told by various people, and so that helps kind of ground it in reality for me. But I think we're guilty a lot of the time of putting God and Jesus in the same category as Santa or Father Christmas and other things like that. And not through any fault of our own, because again, we push God up as this almost this kind of magical thing, this magical being that created us all. But we also kind of do that with other things. This magical being, the tooth fairy or whatever. We kind of put those up in that same category, and I guess again, we'll see how I turn out. We'll do another interview in 20 years. We'll see how
yes, that
out.
literally is kind of my last question. I like a nice and finally question. So my last question is kind of that. So I know you're only just about to begin your parenting journey, and so I'm kind of like about 24 years on in that. What would you like your do you know if you're having a boy or a girl? Do you know that?
We don't know. No,
you don't
no,
know.
it's going to be a
Okay.
surprise. Yeah.
So when your boy or girl, whatever they are, is 25, so 25 years from now, what would you love it if your child could say about you as a parent?
Oh, yeah, that is heavy. That's
really
nice,
heavy. Nice light
Obviously.
Question to finish.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, nice fluffy question. That's good. I I hope to be alive. That's always a good thing, in 25 years. That'd be quite nice. So on that list of what's your dad been like? Well, he's still here, so that's good. That'd be nice.
Alive.
Alive, yeah. But for the most part, I don't really have a proper answer to that question, unfortunately. But I just want to. I think if I could ask my 25-year-old kid what I'd been like over that time as a parent, for the most part it is just simple. It's just there. I just hope I'm there for them. And that I don't I have a habit, and I always have in some ways, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, that when your passion becomes your job, and then your job is kind of interwoven with your personality and your identity, really, you can always find it drawing you back in, and you can always find it kind of feeling like this not this weight, but it's always going to take up part of your brain. It's always going to feel like in the back of your mind. And so my hope is that my 25-year-old kid will just say that dad was present in the moment.
Because you can be there but not there, can't you? Do you know what I
100%.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, for them to feel that they'd got your time and they'd got your interest, and that you were theirs. Lovely. Yeah.
And it helps when, with the stress of, especially when you're kind of thinking about your career ahead. I'm nearly 30, and so you obviously go through that kind of that 30 crisis where you try and think, oh, what have I done with my 20s, and actually what can I do with my 30s in my life, my career. And the main thing that I've always my hope is that it will kind of ground me in that. So actually, anytime that I feel like I'm not earning enough money, or I'm not being having enough prestige around what I do, my hope is that if I can keep my kids fed and happy, and I can be present in their lives, then at least I've done something correct. And it sounds corny, but I think it genuinely is
I
true.
think
And
it sounds lovely.
I think we, as I think parenting in some ways is one of the best things that we do as people. And I'm just excited to kind of be part of that group of people that have attempted that. We'll see how it goes. Ask me in 25 years, it'll be fine.
Well, 25 years on, I just love it more and more. I really genuinely do. I don't want to go back to previous stages of parenting, but I love them all, and I absolutely love parenting adult children as well. So I think you are about to start the most wonderful adventure. I really do. And we wish you well. We really do.
Thank you.
It's imminent, and we just hope it all goes really, really smoothly for you. Alex, it's been lovely to chat to you, and I'm so pleased
it's been great.
People are going to see the face behind so much of what they do see that comes out from our church.
And hopefully they kind of understand why they don't see me very often, because I'm not particularly charismatic or brief. So I apologize if this episode was quite long.
No, it's lovely. It's really, really lovely to chat to you and hear a bit more of your story. So thank you. Thanks for giving me your time this afternoon.
Awesome.
I'll let you
Thanks,
go
Helen.
and get on with the rest of your day.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.